Hi, it's Chris with Implied Music. What's the difference between a chord progression when you're writing a song with a cycle of chords and a harmonization? They have a lot of things in common, but there's stuff to tease out here. Let's take a look at it today. So I'll play you my chord progression in a second, but I want to say a little bit about how we got to where we are, because in the 30s and 40s, songwriting was built around melody and lyrics and not around cycles of chords. The European common practice tradition of tonic dominant relationships and key centers based around those kinds of functional harmony relationships was prevalent. And so we have all these jazz standards and American songbook classics. I was just doing my my white test with this piece of music here, Mood Indigo, and it's a classic example of that. And if you've never heard the opening version of Mood Indigo from Ellington's band with the trombone and the clarinet, and it's insane. It's a beautiful example of harmonization of melody. But as the guitar became more and more prevalent in American homes and with popular music, simple first position or cowboy chord shapes sort of took over our songwriting world. So here's my cycle: C, F, D minor, G, C, F, D minor. Let's take a look at a melody I wrote that goes with it, and then we'll harmonize that melody, which is really a very different process. So I've got a little guitar part underneath this. Watch what this melody does, and we'll talk about how it plays. Melody tones can be chord tones or dissonant tones, right? Good melodies have dissonant tones to the chord. All right, and it goes on. Well, I want to show you a harmonization of that now. This is a lot more complicated looking, and with any luck at all, we can make it make some sense. But we've got that melody on the top. There it is, just by its little lonesome. Let's listen to it, and then we'll talk about how it's working and what's going on. In this version, melody is king, right? The chord cycle dominated my melodic writing, right? I knew I had to go someplace that would either fit in the chord or would give me a little push. Whereas I'm working backwards. And the truth is, the chord cycle approach is actually the backwards approach because it's the more contemporary approach. In the old days, this is kind of how everything worked. The melody and the lyrics would come first. You probably noticed this begins pushing to a minor chord. This is A minor. And the A minor chord falls down, A minor major 7, A minor 7. It's beautiful. And of course, I got to the A minor with this E7 chord. This is a classic dominant tonic motion in minor, and it would be familiar to a jazz musician or anyone writing in the style from the 20s, 30s. And this moment here, this is kind of a C7 chord. E, B flat, C, and there's the ninth. C7 is the 5 of F, and that's the next chord I play. So I've replaced the chords from the original chord cycle, haven't I? I went C, F before, and now A minor, C7, F. It's a really different emotional feeling. And I want you to notice as well that interior voices, that is to say, notes within my harmonization, are moving sometimes in contrary motion to the melody, sometimes creating little wiggles like these notes here that give a little animation to things. A minor, walking down, C7, F with a little wiggle. And that right there is surprisingly a version of B flat major. Instead of a G chord in that beat, we have an inverted B flat triad with a major 7. The E is the Lydian tone. I've got a strong sensation there. It's a harmonization of the melody. That's a diminished passing chord. To E7. The diminished chord acts as a sort of a smooth way to get from the B flat chord to the E7 chord, harmonizing this B on top with E7. It makes for a very different emotional experience of the melody. It might sound a little old-fashioned, but it would be beautiful in the context of, say, the harmonization for a film, something like that. In the second half of this harmonization, I've gone for kind of a more jazz musician approach, right? So here this F going down to the E suggests to me an approach to a C chord. And what I've done is I've used D flat 7 as a tritone substitution for G7. This is a classic jazz musician harmonization. Really quickly, sinking down to the C7, D flat 7, C7, yeah. And of course, C7 is the 5 of F, right? But we don't go there. We go to, let's see if you recognize this chord, D, F sharp, C. It's a D7 chord, isn't it? With a ninth. And we've got a ninth up here. Everything's moving down. D is the 5 of G, right? And so D7 goes to, we'll be there in a moment, G7, C7, G minor 7, C7. It should go to F, shouldn't it, right? But no, because the melody is king, the melody goes down from here, goes C down to B. I've got to harmonize that B, and I really can't, I don't really want to, I didn't want to land on the B and have an F chord. It was just a little too much even for me. So what I did was 2, 5, 1, G minor 7, C7, B major. Boom! G major 7, B major 7. What's the difference between a chord cycle, a chord progression, and a harmonization? The chord cycle is king. All our melodic tones exist in relationship to the demands of the cycle. And that can be really exciting and interesting, especially like we saw in the Harry Styles analysis video, when melodic tones sit on ninths and sixths and sevenths. It can be really kind of brilliant and fascinating. A harmonization takes melody as king and then supports the melody in sometimes really surprising ways. We have emotional stories to tell using both techniques, and they're both useful. I think maybe it's something that everybody should try. Well, I hope this has been useful. Like and subscribe and ding the bell. You'll be notified when I do my videos when you do that. And I'll see you next time.